Welcome to Season 4 of Business Basics. You're on the mic with Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach. This podcast is dedicated to helping you grow your business. I hope you've been enjoying the reboot of my podcast and have learned some valuable information. Sometimes the best way to learn is by seeing what not to do. This season, we're going to revisit more episodes from the past while learning some key business basics. In this episode, I address the age-old conundrum of capitalism versus greed. The fact of the matter is this: capitalism is a construct. It is neither good nor bad. It is the people who interpret it that determine whether it works for or against the whole. At the root of why it typically doesn't work for the whole is greed. Greed is an issue of the heart, and it has run rampant on this earth since time was time. Take a listen. And welcome back to On the Mic with Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach, and you're listening to Business Basics. This podcast is dedicated to helping you grow your business. COVID-19 is still shaping the way we live and work. Unfortunately, for small businesses, it will mean the end. I've been wrestling a bit with the argument that capitalism is the problem. And the fact is this: capitalism, like anything else, is a construct. It is neither good nor bad. It is the people who interpret it that determine whether it works for or against the whole. At the root of why it typically doesn't work for the whole is greed. Greed is an issue of the heart, and it has run rampant on this earth since time was time. So let's talk about the initial funding that the SBA had earmarked, or from the economic stimulus plan that the government approved the first time around. And so if you don't know, they did run out, and they ran out of all $350 million. And so we're going to get into that. So that funding, again, that was earmarked for small businesses, ended up going to large companies who have attorneys and accountants on standby. And it was likely that these companies knew about the stimulus package well in advance and was ready to submit their applications from day one. I say this because how could they not know when you've got people in Congress who sold off stocks, billions and millions of dollars worth of stocks before the market crashed? They knew. The problem is that they never should have qualified in the first place. Publicly traded companies have no business getting stimulus money that's dedicated for small businesses. But companies like Ruth Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack, they never should have seen a dime of that money. And while they have agreed to return the money they received, it was only after public outcry. And so tell me, how is it that we have companies, not just like Shake Shack or even Ruth Chris, but you've got, there was a company in Georgia that paid $6.5 million to resolve a Justice Department investigation, and then 2 weeks later they got $10 million of the stimulus money. AutoWeb, paid its executive, its CEO, $1.7 million in 2019, and then a week later got $1.4 million from the same loan program. Explain. A software company, Intellinetics, they got $838,700 from the program, and then agreed the following week to spend at least $300,000 to purchase a rival firm. And you want to know how they ran out of money. Companies like this should have never gotten that money, ever. But when they get it, they got large sums of money. And so there was no way possible for these companies, for small businesses to even get some of this money. And the way the banks were deciding, it's like, if you didn't have a relationship, forget about it. A housing company, Legacy Housing, it's a Texas company that manufactures pre-made homes. They had access to $25 million credit line. That was April 1st. Okay. Less than 2 weeks later, on April 10th, they got money, $6.5 million from the People's Bank of the SBA loan program. But they already had access to a $25 million credit line. So why did they need $6.5 million from the SBA loan? This is the problem. What were the guidelines? Escalade Sports already had a $50 million credit line from JP Morgan Chase. Why did they get $5.6 million in federally backed loans for the PPP program? They don't need it. They didn't need it. They never needed it. But what were the guidelines in place? Did they have any? Who knows? I mean, we can just keep going on and on. There are a couple more that I want to... It's just amazing how these large companies are securing this money away from companies and businesses that need it. And it's unfortunate. The Paycheck Protection Program was for companies, small businesses with 500 or fewer workers. Yet you've got companies that have 700, 795, 1,200 employees getting this money. Why? They never should have gotten it. So you've got companies with 1,500 employees getting $10 million in PPP loan, steel manufacturers with 1,000 workers, but that's twice the 500 employee limit, but they still got the money. They still got the money. So where does that leave small businesses? How can you compete as a small business? At the end of the day, if there's no guidance happening, you can't. I'm sorry to say it, but the reality is when this is all said and done, some small businesses will not survive. But that doesn't mean you can't start another business or redirect your focus to something else at a later time. Get the help you need. Go to SCORE and get you some help to figure out how to turn the corner, because you've got companies like Potbelly. Potbelly is a chain of sandwich shops. They have more than 400 locations. They reported $409.7 million in revenue last year, and yet they got $10 million in a forgivable relief loan. How? A company, Nikola Motors, they were valued at $3 billion, and yet they got $4 million of that money earmarked for, guess what? Small businesses. It's not acceptable. And it's hard. Yes, I know it's very hard, and it's difficult for small businesses to compete. With all this greed, how can you survive? Listen, according to a monthly survey, of 300,000 firms, right? The index of optimism fell to 101 in the first half of March, a solid reading, but then hit 92 in the second half. The net percent of owners expecting higher real sales in the coming months fell 34 percentage points to a net negative 30%. This loss of revenue would require significant reductions in employment, the major costs, as well as reduced spending on inventories and capital projects. If you want to read more about this, you can read this on, I believe this is a Forbes article that I'm reading, and it is called The COVID-19 Recession in Small Business. It was published actually April 27th today. So listen, there's a lot of information here about small businesses and what can happen. Unfortunately, many banks, especially the large ones, did not decide to observe the spirit of the legislation, and they favored bigger banks. One of the things that they're not telling people is that part of, getting approved, they're looking at credit ratings. And so if you're not in the 670, 680, 700 range, you're not going to get approved. And that is unfortunate. That's the unfortunate thing. When the wealthiest zip codes in the country are approved for $2 million, what does that say? How can we expect small businesses to compete? It's the wealthiest zip code. You don't even need it. You don't need it, but yet they got it. Fisher Island down here in Miami got approved for $2 million, and they literally had to have a homeowners association meeting to determine whether to give the money back. That is just, I don't even have words for that. It's unbelievable. And so I encourage you to read this article on Business Insider. It's called Coronavirus Didn't Bring the Economy Down. 40 Years of Greed and Corporate Malfeasance Did. It's by Paul Constant. It's on Business Insider. It was published on April 10th. I encourage you to go out there and read this article. I mean, he's sharing some great information here from some people. And at the end of the day, one of these quotes is just it's just right on the money here about what we're seeing and why things are the way they are. It is absolutely corporate malfeasance. Their inability as corporate companies, their inability to really manage is what's hurting. It's just like Southwest has they have $4 billion, I believe, and $4 billion in liquid money, like cash on hand. And so to bail out the airline industry, they would have to repay $7 billion. Southwest has $4 billion by itself on hand. So it's possible for businesses to do what they need to do to be able to make it. They just don't want to spend that money. The problem is when you take all your shares and your stocks and you sell them and you do all this other kind of stuff just so you can pay your executives all of these big bonuses. And so one of the things that's in this article, it says one of the reasons that we're having to bail out all of these industries is that the industries themselves have been made fragile by decades, and literally decades, this is not a lie, of shareholder value maximization instead of building resilience. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the bottom line. The only way to defeat greed is with clean hands and a pure heart. What are the odds that will actually happen with the leadership at these big businesses? This is Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach. I just want to encourage you to keep your head up. Use whatever resources are available. SCORE is offering a lot of online workshops right now. The SBA is offering some online workshops, some of them free, some of them are reduced price. But do what you can to save your business. I was on a executive business meeting this morning, and one of the things we're working on is how can we redirect the flow of this business so that we can keep the business afloat, but also how can we help other businesses in this process. And so everybody's shifting and adjusting. You just got to figure out how to shift and adjust for yourself as well. So again, thanks for listening to On the Mic with Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach. If you like this podcast, please make sure you like and share it. I do appreciate your support. If there are topics you'd like me to cover, or if you need a business coach, you can email me at info@globalmentorcoach.com. Again, that's info@globalmentorcoach.com. Thanks again for tuning in with me, Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach. Remember to spread lots of love and light. Until next time.
The PPP fiasco of 2020 was real, and small businesses are still feeling the effects of the injustice. We can come up with a million reasons why big business continues to win, but it will always boil down to old-fashioned greed. The only way to defeat greed is with clean hands and a pure heart. What are the odds that will happen with the leadership at these big businesses? Let's talk about the recording. I don't know about you, but I can hear so much growth. The issue with this episode is obviously all the breaths and smacks. The pause for effect is better. Ladies and gentlemen, edit your podcast episodes. Thanks for listening to another episode of Business Basics. This season's episodes continue to build on previous seasons to teach some business fundamentals to help you define and strengthen your brand while learning from my podcasting mistakes from day one. Go ahead and like and share this podcast and spread the word about Business Basics. I sincerely appreciate your support and your listening ear. If there are topics you'd like me to cover, or if you need a business coach, email me at info@globalmentorcoach.com. Again, thanks for tuning in with me, Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach. Remember to spread lots of love and light. Until next time.